So we talked about the anatomy of the brain, and now I will tell you a little bit about what we do in our lab. So humans can do many remarkable things, and one of the things that we find very remarkable is that we can sense the outside world by our sense of touch. So for example, we can feel warmth from a fire or cold from the snow. We also can feel touch, like the squeeze of another person's hand. So do you think this is important, the sense of touch? Why do you think it's important? Right, that's a great answer. It can, we basically learn about the world around us. So it informs us about what is safe around us, what is dangerous. Right, we can also communicate with other creatures, like we can know if another creature likes us or doesn't like us. And we're interested in understanding how that works. So what do you think? How does touch work? So for example, if I touch something very warm, how does that work? What happens in our body? Let's think first, what parts of the body are involved in that? From the beginning. Right, so what's on the surface of my hand? Yes, exactly. There is skin, but in skin there are receptors. Okay, then the signal needs to travel somehow. It travels along the nerves, right? And then it all gathers where? In the brain, right? So these are the main structures, and all of that belongs to what we call nervous system. So this schematic shows all these structures. You can see there are skin, then the nerves. It goes all the way to the brain, and in the brain, this is where our sensations create. But we are interested even going to even smaller structures, zooming in, and very important structure that helps us do this is called the sensory neuron. This little thing here is called a sensory neuron. Have you heard about neurons before? Right, so the neuron is a cell of the nervous system. So why do you think the neuron, it actually extends all the way from here to your skin? How can it sense things like heat, cold, or touch? What's very important? There is one very special characteristic of a neuron that is very important, a magic word. I will give you a hint. I have a slide with it. What I'm trying to show with this. Electricity, yes, that's correct. So electricity, it's a very important concept for a neuron. So I hope you know this, and that it's very important to realize that our neurons are essentially, they're like batteries in some sense. Because we say that the battery is charged. It means that there is electric charge stored in the battery. In the same way, neurons actually, they can store charge, but they do it somewhat differently. They store charge outside of their membranes. And when we touch something like hot or something like pressure, these charges, positive ions, they can flow inside the neuron, and they generate an electric signal. Electricity starts flowing along the neuron, and this is called action potential. Maybe you've heard this word before, right? And then this action potential travels to the end of the neuron, and it can be, it causes the release of chemicals from one neuron to another neuron, and that's how the signal is transmitted further along the path and all the way to the brain. So again, putting this all back together, what happens when we touch something? We activate the neuron. The electrical signal is transmitted to the spinal cord and goes up and all the way to the brain. Yes?
Is it the neurons or the brain that realize that this is heat, that this is cold?
Oh, that's a very good question. So what do you think?
I would think it's the brain. The neurons are just sending the signal, but the brain is the one that actually realizes it.
Yeah, I think that would be correct. So the perception, the feeling that we get, that we call sense of warmth or touch, is actually created in the brain. But at the same time, when we, for example, you touch something very hot in your hand, you immediately withdraw it. So do you think there is time? Do you think there is time for you to think and have that feeling and perceive it? No, right? So in this case, actually, the brain is not needed. Some processes are initiated as a reflex, and it only goes to the spinal cord, and then this information about something very warm can immediately go to the motor nerve. Actually, this schematic also showed this. there is a reflex loop which is closed here, and it goes to the motor nerve, and it goes to your muscle and triggers your muscle moving away. So the brain is needed to perceive, to know about the sense of touch, but it's not necessary to trigger action in some cases. So that's a great question. And another very interesting thing about these neurons, sensory neurons, that there are many types of them, because we actually can feel, humans can feel many different types of sensation. For example, there is like a texture of a wet tongue of a cat, or vibration of your cell phone, right? These are quite different sensations. Can you name any other things that we can, any other qualities that we can perceive with touch? Yeah, well, some of them are shown here, but any others? Yeah, right, temperature, okay, any others? When is, so yeah, for example, there's also soft touch, but then when something is very strong and potentially dangerous, potentially can lead to injury, how do we call it? Pain, exactly. So there are special receptors for pain. As you can see, humans can feel many different things, and we're quite good at sensing touch. But some animals are actually even better in that, and they're very useful for science. For example, this animal. Does anyone know this animal? Yes. What?
Is that a mole?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a special kind. It's a star-nosed mole, right? So this animal, which part of its body do you think is very sensitive, very specialized in sensing touch? Yeah, so this star, this nose organ, right? So it is blind, and it lives in the dark, so it needs this organ to orient in the space. What is this animal? No one knows?
Is that
Yes.
a naked mole rat?
Right, that's exactly right.
Good
Good job.
That's the thing that
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting weird animal, you see it's naked, right? So it doesn't have hair. But if you look closely here, you see these long single hairs. Yeah, so these are actually very touch sensitive, and also that's how this animal can sense the surroundings. Yes.
You see those as sort of extended fibers?
Well, I think it's a more complex structure. I think it's covered with sort of like keratin, the same as our hair, but inside that hair there may be nerve. Next animal. Well, you must know this one. Platypus, right? What is sensitive in this animal? The bill,
Yeah.
right? Correct. So the bill is actually covered with skin, and it's very, very sensitive. And then this is an easy one. That's just a dot. Again, what's sensitive? The bill. Why do you think ducks need this very sensitive bill? What do they do with it? Yes, correct. They eat, right? So this video shows how they feed themselves. And you can see that they find food in this very murky water. But they cannot see what's in the water. So they must continuously try to like touch and feel what's inside, what's in that water. And that's how they can find food. So their bills are very, very sensitive. We are using them to study touch. And in our lab, we are trying to understand what kind of neurons are mediating these behaviors, how they work. So how can we do that? We use a technique called electrophysiology. Have you heard about this before? So electrophysiology. Electro means studying electrical events, electrical processes inside our bodies. As we just talked, electricity is very important in neurons. But because it's electricity, it means that we can record it from outside by placing an electrode. Electrode is just like a metal wire. So if you put a metal wire near the neuron, this electricity will start to flow inside the electrode, and we can record it and study it this way. And you can get a signal looking something like that. So this is a recording of electricity in a biological specimen. First, what you can see here is noise. Do you know why there is noise? Well, because electricity is everywhere around us. Like all the electrical devices, even our bodies, create some sort of electrical field. And this will be always picked up by the electrodes. But then we can see these spikes, which show us the electricity flowing in the neurons. So today we will actually try to record this kind of signal from a cockroach leg. So this is a drawing that we will, or the setup that we will use. Yeah, and we can talk more about this at the stations. Okay, so are you ready? Let's do this.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So let's split up into groups. 5 people go to this station. 5, the first row can go